right through this tournament. Every team has had their ups and downs, but I think as far as consistency is concerned, they've been absolutely spot on. Apart from maybe one game where against England, if I'm not wrong. But generally speaking, and you rightly mentioned there aren't so-called superstars of this format, but all of them they exactly know what is expected of them, what their role is, and they are brilliant at doing the one percenters right. Right at this stage, at this level, it's about those one percenters. Converting those ones into twos. The fielding, fielding is a huge thing in Australia and big grounds, because as a fielder you've got to know how to cut angles, where to stand 10 yards in front, or 10 yards from the boundary, or 5 yards from the boundary. All these things, I mean, the one percenters, I don't think there's any team in the world which does it better than New Zealand. And that's the reason in all these, ICC tournaments or big games, or big platforms, they are so good. And obviously, I mean, Kane Williamson, even though he hasn't had a good run in the last couple of years with a bat, but I think he's one of the best international captains around. The way he handles his bowlers, his team, absolutely brilliant. And they have a very good combination of different kind of not just bowlers but even batters as well. You got Glenn Phillips, brilliant 100 he got. Somebody who's a boundary hitter. On the other side, you've got Way, who's one of those grafters who's going to hang in there till the last, and make sure is there as the glue of the team. A couple of things. Most importantly, it's going to be in Sydney, where the pitch has been on the slower side. It's been slower than usual Sydney pitches, which is known to be slow, and it's been tacky, slow, and it hasn't been a good T20 pitch, if I may say so. So that makes it very, very interesting. That's where someone like Santner, again, someone who goes under the radar so much, he becomes very useful. His economy is what, around six, just over six this tournament. Is so they will become important, and that's where people like Conway and the grafters and Williamson, who plays spin so well,
Right.
will become very, very important.
Absolutely. So Ayaz, let me give you the final word as well. I'll take a final prediction from all of our guests and experts as far as the first semi-final is concerned. Do you feel that the fact that Pakistan is coming with 3 straight wins under their belt, with their tail up and renewed belief, that just kind of gives them an edge in this semi-final?
Well, I don't think that consistency has been their virtue. You've got, as Deep mentioned earlier, some from the top order, they've got a few or batters who've come up and played some superb cameos. But there's nobody who's done, even Gibson is to form. New Zealand top order has been excellent. Somebody like Glenn Phillips rescued them against Sri Lanka, and not just rescued them, played one of the fantastic innings that we've seen in this tournament. And they've got Finn Allen, who can destroy an attack. He led the charge against Australia, and that's when New Zealand began their campaign with a thumping win against Australia. So this is not a batting lineup that you can take lightly, bowling lineup. So I think, certainly in fielding, they're streets ahead. This is going to be a tough match for Pakistan. It's not going to be easy for them at all. They will need almost everybody in the batting and the bowling to fire to overcome this New Zealand side, which has been in many semi-finals. New Zealand have been in many World Cup semi-finals, never got the cup, and this is something that
Precisely.
I think this team is aspiring for.
Yeah, absolutely. Almost always the bridesmaids, also rans, but never really the winners. That's been the story of Kiwi cricket. But I think the consensus is leaning slightly towards New Zealand. Am I right? Final comments, 10 seconds each. Manipaji, who do you think has the edge in the semi-final?
I think it's going to be a very good game. The Kiwis actually, they're not heroes in their country, so they've always gone into these kind of matches with lesser pressure. But under Williamson, who's handled this team very well, they've won the Test Championship, so they've tasted that, and I think they're not going to let it go. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Pakistanis because the way they've reached the semi-finals and the kind of pressure that they get from their ex-cricketers and their cricket lovers in the country.
Right. So Pakistan under the gun, even though they have a lot of belief coming into this match, But with Captain Cool at the helm, New Zealand as cool as a cucumber always. You never really sense that there is great pressure on them, but they always also know how to deliver on the big stage. I've completely run out of time. Thank you, Ayaz, Deep and Maninder for joining us. It's been a very engrossing and riveting cricket chat with you. And of course, remember, a reminding note for our viewers, I will be joining you from Australia as we build up to the semi-finals. And of course, the big one, the final in Melbourne as well. Here's hoping, of course, that India will be there and we'll be bleeding blue when that final comes. So thanks a lot for watching in and tuning in today, and stay with us throughout our T20 World Cup coverage here on CNN News 18. Goodbye for now.
Making serious allegations against the film. They're saying the film is not showing history.
Namaste, Jai Hind, and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narasimhan, and to all our viewers, thank you very, very much. It's interesting, isn't it, how our Indian calendars work and how the forces of nature work. This time around, close on the heels of Deepavali came the solar eclipse, and somewhere close on the heels of Kartik Purnima comes the lunar eclipse. So at all points in time, our festivities have gotten a little muddled because of the way geography works, or perhaps nature works. So those who are taking their Kartik Purnima dip had to do it before 5:20 p.m. this evening, because the Chandra Grahan was happening and all the doors of all the temples were being closed. So big phenomenon there. But our focus tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is a different phenomenon. It's not just about our belief systems, but those who are working quietly, subverting the system to try and alter the DNA of Bharat itself. Imagine if there are people who are walking into your homes and trying to tell you, throw away your idols, tear away your gods, posters, pictures of your gods, because these are not gods, they are the devil itself. And your life is in misery, or your life is in trouble because you are following the wrong god. Throw them in the well, come and embrace this god or my god, and life will become better for you. You will get jobs, your children will get education, your the elderly in your home will get medical care, and suddenly you will get money. So you go and meet somebody and you're walking back, and lo behold, a book appears, which is a sign, which is an indication. It came out of nowhere. Miracles will happen. These are the claims that are being made. Gullible people, simple people are being induced, seduced, and of course confused into trying to believe that their faith is wrong. The entire Indic system is being challenged. The entire civilizational ethos of Bharat is being challenged. That which has been practiced for centuries is being challenged. And CNN News 18 has been right at the heart of exposing or blowing the lid of this massive conversion mafia rampant across the country. It's now become a national malaise. We started with Punjab, and then we saw that there was evidence of it in Palghar, in Maharashtra, evidence of it in Jharkhand, Dhanbad, Tirunelveli. We did a big expose on what the racket was in Tamil Nadu, and we blew the lid of crypto Christians, and we realized that judges in courts had made notes of what was rampant in Tamil Nadu. Then, of course, Golaghat in Assam, where again it's a different game altogether, where two Abrahamic religions seem to have split that state into Lower Assam and Upper Assam, and they are up and about working there, trying to ensure that the entire indigenous population, the entire Hindu population is changed one way or the other. We are not openly or brazenly making these claims. This is what evidence points to on ground, ladies and gentlemen. We share with you detailed investigation, but this is something which is a huge cause for concern. Now, let's try and look at the various conversion rackets that we have been able to see. So this is pan-India. This is what we have seen across various states. But now let's see, where are all these rackets happening? First up, Punjab. Punjab, it's rampant in Gurdaspur, Jalandhar. These are the worst hit here in this state. They are the worst hit. But this entire border region is facing a massive conversion racket. Then let's move to the next one. The next state, over 2% of the population. Then from Punjab, has been it has been converted. More than 2%, it's nearly 10%. That's what the claims are being made in Punjab. SGPC launching a counter campaign. Tamil Nadu, Kanyakumari, this entire region. There are people down here in this region who have changed the name of Kanyakumari to Kanigameri. That's the level to which it's happening. Tiruvallur, Kanchipuram, these are some of the worst hit. It's manifesting in schools. The entire Lavanya case also stemmed out of a similar instance. Economically weaker areas have been targeted. The coastal regions are being targeted. There is a 16% rise in converts in the Kanchipuram area in 10 years. And court judges have written that almost 70% of Kanyakumari or southern Tamil Nadu, that entire region, is crypto-Christians. Then let's move westward towards Maharashtra. There is a big racket in Palghar, Talasari, Jawahar and also Vikramgarh, with cops who are probing the induced conversions among the Vanvasis there. 4 tribal missionaries have been arrested also in this region. Let's then look at Jharkhand. That's another state. So from the west, we are moving in here towards the east. There is Jharkhand and of course there is the neighboring Bihar and also in West Bengal. But Jharkhand, Dhanbad is the worst hit areas where again Vanvasis who've been lured into converting. There are massive protests that have been held by locals demanding anti-conversion law in the state. But the accusation is on the state government itself of being absolutely lax. Right on the middle of the street, you're finding signages which is over emboldening. And government land has been encroached upon to build institutions which host or harbor this entire conversion mafia. Assam conversion agents operating on tourist visas. They were actually, a lot of them were sent back. 27 foreign nationals reportedly have come in on tourist visas in Assam itself, and they've been doing this work of proselytization, which is again a visa violation. Campaigns have been run in Golaghat, Karbi Anglong. 7 Germans, 3 Swedes have been deported already. So it was not just what was seen with the Markaz at Nizamuddin, where there were a lot of entities, people who were coming in on tourist visas and trying to do their tabligh work nefariously, but it's happening in this angle also, in this aspect also. So in all these places, we are seeing this manifest. Thus, it doesn't stop here only. It's now trickling into some of the other states too. Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and once again, this entire instance that's come to the fore in Assam. In Rajasthan, there was a massive conversion effort that has been blown the lid off. And in fact, 28th of October, if I get the date right, there was an effort to try and mass convert more than 2,000 people just on the outskirts of the capital, Jaipur. And the person who was coming there as one of the pastors who is nefarious for running this racket in Punjab. In Madhya Pradesh, there is a concerted campaign to free all of the Malwa region from conversion, and this has been mounted by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. Again, in Assam, there is a big campaign that's moved in to protect the indigenous population and the Hindu Sanatani construct of these indigenous people because of this double attack that's coming in, both in Lower Assam and in Upper Assam from 2 separate Abrahamic entities. Is this conversion mafia a national malaise, and how has it slipped or escaped the radar of our agencies and of course our political establishment, the governments of the day? That's the question that we try and find answers to over the course of the next 25 minutes. Let's go straight across to our panelists this evening. Sriraj Nair of the VHP, so he's the spokesperson. Dr. Janendra Burman, Assistant Professor, Cotton University, joining us from Guwahati. Neeraj Atri, author, Brainwashed Republic, and Ramneek Singh Maan, political analyst, all joining us this evening. Namaste, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Greetings on the occasion, festive occasions here. But all these festivities are being brought to a naught. Somewhere everybody is being told these festivities, don't believe in them. They don't exist. They're all false gods, false truths. Ramneek Singh Maan, starting with Sikhi itself, where these Gurudwaras are now being called Isa Gurudwaras. They are saying don't follow the Guru, follow Yesu. They are changing the traditional tappas itself. And from there, they are now trickling and spilling over into neighboring Rajasthan.
You see, Anand, the point is that these activities have been going on unchecked and unabashed for a very long time. and the acts of criminal acts of these so-called prophets, if I may, because that's the exact word that they use for themselves, or pastors per se, has been going on, unpunished. These are criminal acts. They have been luring people. As a matter of fact, you would not need to run this cancer train from Bathinda to Bikaner if you were to believe in these pastors and these prophets, because they claim to cure anything from kidney disease, heart disease, paralysis, to all sorts of orthopedic treatments, even cancer. So they would assure you of getting you or your patient rid of dialysis if you have a kidney failure. So if you believe in them, then you don't need hospitals, then you need more churches. This is what they have been preaching all along. And, I personally have been approached by a few from the Northeast to actually become a preacher. This was about 10 years back. So they have been approaching, people who have a Sikh face or a Sikh attire, and you would see a fresh generation of pastors in Punjab which belong to separate castes. And they have actually made very deep inroads, and they've gone unchecked. As a matter of fact, Punjab being the defender of faith, the aggressors who would come to India would come through Punjab. And our gurus have sacrificed. We celebrate Guru Nanak Dev's birth anniversary, 553rd birth anniversary today. Ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Sache Paatshah, sacrificed himself for Desh and Dharm. So this is very painful that this has been going on for long. But yes, there is provision in law. There can be FIRs which can be filed. I have personally seen, I've been inside these services, and it's so sad. The belief system of people is such that, you will see people on stretchers, on wheelchairs, you'll see people with a drip in their arm, and they would be attending these, when they have to be taken care of in a hospital, they would be in a service. So this is what they're doing. The belief system of Sikhi in Punjab was brought down a notch down by the Dera culture, the Derawad. The Derawad and the pastors have made people to believe that they can do without a Gurdwara, they can do without a temple, they can do without a Brahman or a Granthi. So this is what they have been preaching. Dil Jod Mala, or going to a pastor. Yes, you are right. From Gurdwaras to Isa Dwaras, this is what they have been doing. And you'll not be surprised if I tell you the Asia's largest church is being built in Jalandhar. Where is the funding coming from? That's the basic source. I went deep into this, and I would not want to name a microfinance company based in Northeast. The man called John. He was given 300 crore rupees by the then Finance Minister of India, P. Chidambaram. And when I went to his home, I could see his pictures with Sonia Gandhi, with Rahul Gandhi and P. Chidambaram himself. So there are questions being asked as to the governments then at the union, at the central level, or the governments at the state level. Why did they allow them to spread such lies and convert people by alluring them? It's a crime. It's not that people would, convert their religion, for which gurus have, sacrificed. This and Sanatan Sanskriti, or, this belief system is the oldest and the only surviving civilization. The Mayans have gone, the Egyptians have gone. We are the only living civilization for 5,000 years plus now.
I'll tell you, they will.
So this is an attack on our civilization. This is a civilizational clash.
Correct.
It's Abrahamic versus Sanatan.
No, it is happening, but it is also being allowed. Okay, governments of the past, you are saying you are laying the blame on them. That's your claim. I am saying what is happening in the last 8 years. Where has it been stopped? If this government is not going to allow any of this, what about What about local?
Anand.
What about
Anand? It's all political.
Yeah, but Ramnik ji, I'm going to take this across to our other panelists, and I'm just opening it up a little, and I'll come back to you. One of the points, Ramnik Man makes a very, very, very solid points of view, and he's come out and said this is happening. All of us know it's happening all around us. Who's allowing it? Because this is criminal. What they are doing is, you are allowed to propagate, you are not allowed to vilify. You are allowed to talk about it, but you are not allowed to induce, confuse and mislead. नीरज यात्री, पर ये सब हो रहा है.
Yes, Anand, ये सब कुछ हो रहा है, and all of us are mute spectators looking at this subversion of the entire civilization that is known as Sanatan Dharma. Ramanik Man has raised very pertinent questions regarding the goings on, but what we have to remember is that unfortunately, this has been done under the rubric of all religions are same. Look at the irony of this. That if all religions are same, then why do we need to even convert? That is one point. Second point is that look at all those NGOs, all those so-called rationalists who will keep on pounding, who will keep on thrashing that Sanatan Dharmas or Hindu Dharmas, so many of ill practices which it should get rid of, it has casteism and all those things. But those very people, those very organizations, those very politicians, they don't utter a single word when they see the drama that is unfolding every day in front of us, where these idiotic gestures are being made and the pastor is claiming that they've been cured. Like Ramanik was saying, then instead of having hospitals, we should be having more and more churches. Now the point is that why is no rationalist organization talking about this? And I must congratulate you, Anand, for raising this point. I don't see such debates going on most of the channels. They are involved in mundane discussions. Whereas now what happens is that the present Prime Minister, you've raised very right question that it's been 8 years, nothing has been done. What they say is that we have tightened the control on FCRA. Okay, that we can accept that. But when we look at the data of MHA, the inflow of money has not reduced. In fact, it has increased over these last 8 years. Just change their modus operandi. Now, the present Prime Minister Modi ji, they swear by Mahatma Gandhi also and by Swami Vivekananda also. Mahatma Gandhi was very open in saying that missionary activity is the worst kind of poison to sap the earth. And was very categorical that whatever conversions have been made, we should bring them back into the Sanatan fold. Likewise, Swami Vivekananda, again somebody who is admired by Narendra Modi ji, he was very categorical in saying that one Hindu converting is not only a Hindu less but an enemy more. And he also was a votary of converting all those back. But what is happening? In the name of secularism, which should be termed as pseudo-secularism, the missionaries are running amok all over the country and there is no check and balance over them. I've not seen anything happening to any of these missionaries. They're coming here, getting involved in all kind of illegal activities, and you don't see anyone being booked. On the contrary, when a little bit of noise was made, some kids playing on street, they had shattered a window pane of a church. A special helpline was created to cater to Christian community. Okay, we can live with that also. Okay, let us agree with that also. But at least you should see through the game that when they are converting, they have a much larger game plan. They are planning to subvert the entire civilization. And now, then the question is raised that what is harm in that? What we should remember is that there was a dark age in Europe, which is still called a dark age. And it coincides with which period? When church was calling the shots all over Europe. Now, and they have been very courageous, Europeans have been very courageous to get rid of the church, its control over states. And do we want that same thing to be happening to our civilization? No, we don't. And we did not vote this government to say these goody-goody things and not act on the civilizational issues. They are supposed to act on these issues, which are changing the demography. As you rightly pointed out in your report that officially they claim it is just 2%, 2.5%, 3%, but on the ground, depending on the region, the actual numbers are 10% to as high as 25%. But
no, see, I agree. The fact is that since 2011, we don't even have a census, so we don't even know what the actual numbers are on ground. So the census has also been delayed inordinately. But you can see the trend around us. We can see the trend around us. Sriraj Nair ji, before I come across to you, I'm going to ask Professor Janendra Burman to tell us what's happening in Assam. Assam, it seems to be, okay, Ada Tera, Ada Mera kind of a game that's happening. Lower Assam is part of this entire pan-Islamist agenda because you have Ansarul Bangla and Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh there and ISIS-driven people. With them, these maps have been found. Investigation authorities have claimed that, and they've said that these maps should draw the Lower Assam as part of Greater Bangladesh, or what they are calling. This Upper Assam, this entire Vanwasi region is now under the throes of the missionaries who are now spreading from the neighboring states, which have had a total demographic shift between 1971 and 2011.
Exactly. As we have rightly pointed out, actually Assam is sitting on a volcano, and religious conversion, it has assumed an alarming proportion. Let me give you some example. In tribal dominated Karbi tribal people are there in Karbi Anglong district of Assam, where Christian population has increased in 1991 to 2001 42%, and in 2001 to 2011 Christian population increased 33%. Another tribal dominated Bodo people dominated Kokrazar district, Christian population increased in one decade 58.15%. So they have, the missionaries, they have converted 17.63% of Karbi people, 10% of Bodo people, and in Meghalaya, 96% of Garo people have already been converted. In Assam's Vaishnavite site, the greatest Vaishnavite site known as Majuli, they have built more than 60 churches. In the tea garden areas, they are building churches after churches and converting the innocent tribal people. The situation can best be described what Aime Cesare wrote. I quote Aime Cesare: societies drained of their essence, cultures trampled underfoot, institutions undermined, lands confiscated, religion smashed, magnificent artistic creations destroyed, extraordinary possibilities wiped out. This is what is being happened. This is what has happened in entire Northeast, and now Assam still remains a Sanatan people, still remains majority, but their soft target is now the tribal people of Assam. And as the other panelist has rightly quoted, the greatest secular icons of India, Mahatma Gandhi, he said in an interview in The Hindu, I quote Mahatma Gandhi: every nation's religion is as good as another. Certainly India's religions are adequate to her people. We need no converted spirituality. What he said in Young India, what he wrote on 13th April 1931, Gandhiji wrote, India stands in no need of conversion from one faith to another. And in this context, I would like to quote Karthik Orao. He was a great tribal leader and who launched a movement actually to amend Article 342. Central government, it's the high time central government should amend. Government should amend Article 342. And what was the Zone Parliamentary Committee recommendation? Those recommendations were submitted to Indira Gandhi, the then Prime Minister. I quote from the recommendation, and that needs to be implemented now. The Zone Parliamentary Committee report said, no person who has given up tribal faith or faiths and has embraced either Christianity or Islam shall be deemed to be a member of any scheduled tribe. So those persons who have left their tribal Janajati identity, faith, God, they should no longer be entitled to the facilities provided under Article 342 to the tribal people. So that amendment is the need of the hour. I hope government of India.
But here is the game, Professor Burman. Professor Burman, this is the game. The one of the pastors who's actually coming out, his name itself, he's not changed his name to a Christian name. The problem in Tamil Nadu is all of them are crypto-Christians. So they will have their names very, very strongly Shaivite roots or with Vaishnavite roots, the very Hindu names, but they have all converted to Christianity. But they have not changed their religious identity because they want to continue to draw benefits. This is the game. And why do you think this entire quota legislation went into the courts? Since 1995, they've been trying to push for quota for those who have even converted to Christianity, because then the Christians see India as a massive market. We are given to understand nearly 50,000 crores worth of money is ready to be pumped into India the moment that quota OK comes through. That you continue to get your quota benefit despite getting into a Christian, becoming a Christian. So you have this entire coinage of Dalit Christians. You have this entire coinage. So they are first of all playing the caste game, the discrimination game to convert you, and they continue to discriminate you and continue to identify you by your caste origin despite converting you. What a massive game this is, fraud this is. Srirajji, the VHP has taken this up. You've launched a massive nationwide campaign now. But is it too little, too late? Let me ask you.
First of all, Anand, congratulations for doing this show. This was a very important. You've done a great job, because many who were living in denial mode, this will definitely help them to awaken. In 1964, Guru Golwalkar had said, you know, both the Abrahamic religions, they have feasted upon Hindus and fattened themselves. And now Hindus have awakened, although this is a big challenge. This challenge of a conversion mafia, Bharat, the undivided Bharat, has been facing for last 1,000 years. And today, if you see the existence of very Pakistan and Bangladesh is only because of religious conversion, because their ancestors were Hindus only. And we are seeing, and today's Bharat, nearly 20 crore Muslims and around 3 or 4 crore Christians. Their ancestors were Hindus only. But one more thing, after converting, what have they got? These people these Muslims and Christians, look at their pathetic life, what kind of life they are, economic conditions, social conditions, what kind of life they are living. They have been fooled. And one more thing, these pastors and these prophets, where were they hiding during the COVID times? During Corona, they were completely hiding, and no one came out to tried to cure illness and AIDS.
No, their miracles. The miracles went for a vacation, Shiraji. The miracles went for a vacation during COVID.
Yes, exactly. So this Bajinder Singh and all these fraud prophets, we have been urging the government of Bharat to take strict action. We have to crush this conversion mafia before it is late. It is not late even now. We are still there. There are definitely a lot of crypto Christians who have names of Hindus or Rajesh and Mahesh. That we can see mostly in southern part of Bharat, that is Tamil Nadu, coastal Andhra Pradesh, and now in Maharashtra and Gujarat also.
Shiraji,
this has to be identified.
Shiraji, पंजाब में पग पहनकर पास्टर घूम रहा है, पग लगा के पास्टर घूम रहा है, वो बेअद भी नहीं है, उसको नहीं छोड़, उसको खुलेआम छूट दे रखी है.
Our friend Ramanik ji, exactly, Ramanik ji rightly said, Jalandhar is going to be India's biggest church, and where is this money coming from? And the same Jalandhar Archbishop, or whatever they call, he was a rape accused. So this mafia has to be brought to books. This has to be ensured. We have to ensure that the nation crushes. The government takes stringent action and put this mafia behind the bars before it is late. VHP is going to go all out.
Sir,
against
so
this
much so
mafia.
that they are trying to put the symbols. They are trying to put the symbols atop our deities. On top of hills in Coimbatore, where there are Shiva temples, they want to put up, and they are encroaching upon land on Shakti Pithas or Shakti temples, Shiva temples, they are doing it. On top of Vishnu temples, Govinda temples, in Andhra and Telangana, they are doing it. They are doing it. They are doing it right in the middle of the road. They are putting up these symbols saying that you cannot take it.
This is absolutely fraud.
But who is allowing them to do it?
Absolute fraud. Now, Gayatri Mantra, the way that Yeshu Mantra, all this sort of fraud activities are going on. And the government needs to wake up, and we have to ensure that the government takes strictest action. There has to be arrest. And the money, the kind of arrest, you've seen in Kerala, some pastor or prophet, crores of rupees in cash was found. So where is this money coming from? This is a big danger for the nation also. The security
because this is what they have done, Ramnik Man. They are entering via the coasts. They are entering, and there are the 3,000 to 6,000 different small ports and coasts. This is where they are entering into. And the money is making its way in via all kind of nefarious means. And then they are starting to collect also. But people also are so gullible, Ramnik Man. इतने gullible कि किसी को भी आप खुदा मान लोगे, किसी ने कुछ कह दिया तुम्हारा सब ठीक हो जाएगा और सर पर थप्पड़ मार दिया तो आप वहीं झुक जाओगे जिंदगी भर के लिए.
नहीं आनंद, मैं ये समझता हूं कि ये जो एक फैक्ट है जो आप कह रहे हैं कि लोगों से पैसा कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं, वो सही नहीं है. बिकॉज इनका जो टारगेट है वो लोग हैं जो गरीबी में है, मुफलिसी में हैं, जिनके पास हेल्थ केयर के लिए पैसा नहीं है, घर बनाने के लिए पैसा नहीं है, जिनके पास अपने बच्चों को अच्छे स्कूलों में पढ़ाने के लिए पैसा नहीं है. दे बिल्ड गुड स्कूल्स, गुड कॉलेज, एंड देन दे रिजर्व seats for Christians, and then they lure you into converting for education, they lure you into converting to get a own house, घर सिर पे छत के लिए. ये वो सब तमाम चीजें कर रहे हैं जिससे ये आपको आपके धर्म से दूर करें. और जो सबसे बड़ी बात है, दी एपी सेंटर, जो आपके आस्था का जो केंद्र है, वो भारत से निकल के कहीं दूर सऊदी में चला जाएगा, रोम में चला जाएगा, अल-कुद्स में, जेरूसलम में चला जाएगा. आपकी आस्था का केंद्र भारत रहेगा ही नहीं. तो भारत के प्रति जो आपकी भावना है, जो प्रेम है, जो स्नेह है, वो भाव बदल जाएगा और आपका भाव किसी और देश में, किसी और जमीन पे चला जाएगा. तो वो भारत की सुरक्षा के लिए भी खतरा है, क्योंकि आपका भाव तो जुड़ता ही नहीं भारत से. और
सबसे बड़ी बात यह है सर कि
आनंद, जस्ट 2 सेकंड्स, जहां पे हम ये बातें डिस्कस करते हैं आनंद, नहीं, सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि मंदिरों को फ्री करना पड़ेगा. यू नीड टू फ्री द टेम्पल्स. आप देखिए कि इतना बड़ा धन है, इतना कुछ है.
You have said all of this. I'm running over. I can only say something कि हिंदुस्तान में हर किले और हर मंदिर के द्वार अंदर से खुले हैं. हिंदुस्तान में हर किले और हर मंदिर के द्वार अंदर से खुले हैं सर. और यहां पर प्रॉब्लम यह है दैट इफ वी डोंट गेट आवर ओन एक्ट राइट टुगेदर एंड वी डोंट हैव आवर बिलीफ सिस्टम राइट, देयर विल बी अदर्स हु विल कम इन एंड टेल अस हाउ टू लीड आवर लाइफ एंड कंट्रोल अस. So that's the biggest challenge all of us have. I've run out of time. I've got a very interesting conversation up next with Dr. Vikram Sampath. So we'll take this conversation forward. That's the promise that I make. Ladies and gentlemen, as we thank our guests on debate number 1, taking a quick break. When we come back, it's the story of Bravehearts of Bharat. The lions who need to tell their tale. The history that we need to know. Itihasa. And from 1857 onwards and sometime before that, Vikram Sampath picks out 15 such Bravehearts across the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat all the way to Manipur. Stay with us.
Voice to the movie. He is the narrator in the movie, but also we have seen a lot of praise for the movie in the last few weeks. Suddenly now, after the movie has been in theatres for weeks, the NCP has taken a stance that there have been some objectionable scenes with respect to the portrayal of Shivaji Maharaj and the portrayal of the story, which the NCP alleges does not adhere to reality or how it happened. This comes immediately after Chhatrapati Sambhaji Raje, who is the direct descendant of Shivaji Maharaj, said that henceforth any wrong portrayal of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj or the events of his life will not be tolerated. Now the NCP has taken this up and has said that Har Har Mahadev itself has certain wrong portrayals, maybe with respect to Baji Prabhu Deshpande, an iconic figure, or with respect to Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj allegedly being portrayed as killing Aurangzeb sitting on his laps. NCP claims that that is not how it happened, and that seems to be too much of creative liberty.
Okay,
So
Vinaya, can I
we
just
saw,
request that you actually stay with us, because we're going to go over to a political leader, but then I want to come back to you for clarity, so do stay with us. Atul Bhatkalkar from the BJP is with us this morning. Sir, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Sir, the NCP making serious allegations against the film. They're saying the film is not showing history accurately. We just shared with our audiences exactly what they had to say, what their issues were with the depictions. Sir, the BJP is a party that in the past has been particularly vocal about the importance of historically accurate depictions. In this case, how is the party responding?
Basically, this is not the issue whether history should be shown in proper perspective or not. That is our stand, consistent stand. But in this particular case, under which law? Award took law in his own hand. That is the issue. That should be debated, first thing. Another second point, why award suddenly done that without launching any complaint to any authority of the state? Because in Har Har Mahadev picture, that picture depicted shown the killing, assassination of Afzal Khan, which award and his own NCP party do not like. They want to twist the history, which was the heroic and nationalistic history by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, that Maharaj killed, assassinated valorly to the Afzal Khan, who was number one enemy of the state and the country and Hindu society. Same Afzal Khan who resurrected the Tuzapur Mandir at that time, even Vikram Mandir at Pandharpur. So NCP and especially Jitendra Awad do not like this type of real history, and that's why they always tried
Sir,
to
one
change the
sec.
history
Sir, I just want to check.
accordingly their own,
Right.
own vote
So I
bank.
just want to check with you here, though. While you are accurate when you say that violence is never all right, your party also regularly calls for the boycott of films across the country.
Sorry?
I said your party also regularly calls for the boycott of films across the country. While we can agree that violence is not okay.
Are you comparing boycott and taking law in his own hand?
All right, sir. One sec. I'm not able to hear you, sir. Could you repeat what you just said?
This is nothing but pseudo secularism. Nothing else.
Okay.
Anybody can ask for boycott. This is a fundamental right in the democracy.
All right.
I can say anybody you should not go to that movie. But
Sir,
who allowed Mr. Awad
Sir, just stay
to
with
went
us.
to the theatre?
Just stay with us,
Let
please.
somebody.
I want to go over to Majid Memon from the NCP. Sir, we have a BJP spokesperson with us, and one of multiple accusations that he's making is that while it might be all right to call for a boycott, you can't walk into a theatre like this and intimidate viewers. So what do you have to say about that? Majid Memon from the NCP, are you able to hear me, sir?
Yes, yes.
Namaste and welcome. Like we've started doing here on the Right Stand, we also spend some time talking to those who are taking the right stand for Bharat. They are trying to bring together stories and bring together aspects of our itihasa as it happened, and people who contributed towards the construct of Bharat, the idea of Bharat or India, in a very positive manner. And it takes years of research, a lot of effort, and of course those brickbats and challenges that come along with it. One of them was not only a very good friend, but also somebody who I really admire for the effort that he's put in his research, and who really made a mark with Savarkar, although he spent a lot of other books, but the Savarkar two-part perhaps made him who he is today. Dr. Vikram Sampath, namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Anand.
Good
Such a pleasure to always be with you.
Absolutely. And from Savarkar to Bravehearts of Bharat. I remember, and I must share this with you, that we were on a flight towards a book fest and a lit fest about 1.5, 2 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. And then on that flight, I asked him, what after Savarkar? And he said, I've been working with something. I've been working where I want to talk about the lions whose story has not been told. Because often it's the hunter whose narrative prevails. But what about those lions of Bharat, those brave hearts of Bharat? So I thought it would be lions of Bharat, but you turned it around to brave hearts of Bharat. But let's say, how did this idea germinate? You told me about it then.
Yeah.
So tell us a little more about it now.
So, in fact, this book, Anand, I owe the inspiration of it to my other dear friend, Sanjeev Sanyal. So the two of us keep meeting often and conspiring on so many issues of common interest. So once very casually, several years ago when we met in Delhi, we were casually talking and he said, have you ever wondered, that in our history that we've read in school or growing up, it's always been like a laundry list of wars that we have lost as India and as Indians. And today, if we are still around as a civilization, if we are the only civilization to be alive, there must have been some wars we won also.
Yeah.
And some amount of courage and resistance that we put. So who are these people who put those stories of valor and courage and resistance? And we, as a game, we just try to play with each other, saying, chalo, let's name 10 or 15 people who won wars, or what were the main battles that come to your mind where India won against,
So did you take an infraction point or a cutoff?
Well, we thought of the Arab invasion onwards and thereafter, because that's when the waves of invasions were more rigorous from the Arabs, the Turks, and then the Mongols, the Timurids, the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, the East India Company, you had all of them coming. And it's almost we are made to feel that we've been covering in front of all these invaders without putting any kind of defense. So we both, both being, history buffs, historians, it was quite a tough task to actually name 10 battles which we won. And that's where the idea of this book germinated. And as I started thinking more about it, the other major problem of Indian historiography, of it being so Delhi-centric. I have nothing against Delhi, it's a beautiful city, I love it every time I come here, but still, you know, everything about India, the India story is so centered around this particular place for obvious reasons of it being the political capital. But in the process, vast swathes of land, the south of India, the northeast, eastern India, all these do not find commensurate importance in the narrative that we call as the history of India, history of Bharat. So I think it was high time that Bharat snatched back her narrative of her history from Delhi. And this book tries to do that also, in addition to also giving the women of Bharat, you know, their due.
Their due, their
It's
place.
always his story, and her story never comes in this history. So I think her story was also important to capture.
So it was not more about balancing it out between the his and the her, but also talk about the hers who were there,
Yes.
who always were there.
Right.
So an economist in Sanjeev Sanyal, a historian in Vikram Sampath, decided not to be economical with history, if I may say that. So which are the stories, and did you look at 1857 as the cutoff? Because
Yes.
there will be so many stories.
Yes.
I have to say, I must mention, I'm talking to another author, but I'm talking about another author. In Tuhin Sinha wrote about the tribal stories and the Veers of Bharat. So he went way before 1857, saying these fights were already happening. But for a lot of people, somebody would say 1857 was perhaps the tipping point.
True.
From where I think more these
Freedom.
movements
Yeah.
started, and the whole idea of freedom once and for all started germinating,
Right.
or started also manifesting itself. So the stories that you've covered, first one is Lalitaditya Muktapida, right?
Yes, yes.
Of Kashmir.
Kashmir. And
How many people would talk about Lalitaditya Muktapida? Yeah.
who knows the Karkota dynasty that
Yeah.
he belonged to.
Who?
And Kashmir, and I thought it was symbolic in some way to begin this entire book on civilization with Kashmir, because Kashmir epitomized the best that our civilization could bring forth, and that is why I think it's been the target of attack since then till now.
This portrait of his?
Yes,
This is
it's a sketch, which
it's
is a
sketch.
fair
Representation of who he is. This is
Yes.
Lalitaditya Muktapida of the Karkota dynasty. How many of you knew about it? How many of you? If you don't, or if you still did, read this. It's just awesome. Tell us.
So we start with him and the Digvijaya campaigns that he went on. Of course, Kalhana in the Rajatarangini traces a very fantastic tale of him being a conqueror of the whole subcontinent and all of that, which is a little fantastic. But nonetheless, I think Kashmir was a very important political unit also of India, ancient and early medieval India, and also a center of great learning, which is what he and his successors strove to make Kashmir as. And you had the Sarvagnya Peeth also established there by Adi Shankaracharya. The goddess there was goddess Sharda, the goddess of learning, and the script too was Sharda. So
Sharda
it was
Lipi.
The Lipi. So in more ways than one, I think Kashmir symbolized that pristineness of the civilization. And when we're talking of a book based on the Indian civilization, I thought Kashmir was primordial to it. So from there I go all across to the south of India to the Cholas, Rajaraja and Rajendra. Who again extended the Indic sphere of influence, not necessarily politically or through colonization, but cultural and economic and maritime trade to Maldives, to Sri Lanka, to the Sri Vijaya, the Malay Peninsula. And that is why we even to this day see a very strong Indic influence in all those regions. And in 1025, when Rajendra led his huge naval expedition attacking close to 14 important seaports of Sri Vijaya, it was something that shook the entire maritime, all the players who were there, the Fatimids of Egypt, the Song dynasty of China, and the Cholas, who were the main competitors in the sea trade of the Indian Ocean and the Far East.
So, see, three sides were surrounded by the ocean, and that's why the residents in that region, in that peninsula, called themselves Dravidas. Adi Shankaracharya said, I come from Dravidanadu, as he introduced himself in Kashmir. So the whole concept of Dravida itself surrounded by sea on three sides, or on all sides, and naval expertise that the Cholas had. Bali Yatra is being celebrated 8th, 9th, 10th November from the Mahanadi in Odisha and all the way to Indonesia and Bali. It's being celebrated to revive. How many of us knew about the Bali Yatra? But historians are They will be charged with appropriation. The Cholas were not Hindu, they were Shaivites. How are you bringing in this Indic concept with the Cholas?
Well, Anand, I don't know. This is such a bogus argument which I don't know. We should have just ignored it. But I think the very fact that this whole dismantling Hindutva, that was global Hindutva, whatever that was called last year, this nefarious conference.
These words have been very systematically attacked, no? Hindu, Hinduism, Hindutva. You have a Satish Jarkioli now talking about Hindu, etc. But you had Kamal Hassan turn around and say that the Cholas, because they did the movie, Mani Ratnam's movie, and they were promoting it, and there he said that the Cholas were Shaivites. So he said it was Shaivism, Vaishnavism, the concept of Hindu or Hinduism as a unity or an entity was never there. That's why I was asking you, and now you are saying that these are Bravehearts of Bharat. So how does it all merge?
Well, Hindu, the Sanatan Dharma, whether it's the Cholas in their long history, they've ruled for more than 1,500 years.
Yes.
And in that, they've appeased almost every pantha of what is the Sanatan Dharma, whether it's Shaivism, Vaishnavism, the progenitor of the family they called as Tiruman, who was Vishnu. Later became Suryavanshi, so the Shaura tradition also. Nishumbha Sudini was their family goddess, so Durga, the Shakta tradition, Kaumara, Ganapatyam. They built temples, Brihadishwara temple, all these gigantic Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the temple there. So, in these temples are Hindu temples today, and they performed yajnas as per Vedic rituals. They gave big danas, all these mahadanas that they did. All those were as per Vedic traditions. They patronized people who were well versed in Sanskrit as well as Tamil, and they left their inscriptions and their documents also in both the languages. So today, for us to get back and talk this kind of thing, I think it goes to that very campaign, Anand, that dismantling global Hindutva. They know that the Sanatan Dharma is a huge omnibus. There are so many streams. One part of it is the Vedic core perhaps, but animism or shamanic rituals, that Bhutaradhana of Kantara that we saw, or Tantra, the tantric rituals are completely at odds with what the Vedic rituals do. Similarly, Nirishwarvad, that also. So the omnibus that Sanatan Dharma is accepts all these streams. Today, I think what is being done very, very systematically is to break this omnibus into separate subunits and start delegitimizing each of them, saying this is not Hindu, that is not Hindu. At some point, I'm sure someone is going to come and say even tantric traditions are not Hindu because it has, the Panchamakaras, Mamsa, Meena, all of that which is there, Maithunya and all of that. So that is also someone is going to say, actually they did that in that Kali poster as well, saying this is not part of the Hindu tradition, it is some subaltern. So once you dismantle all the organs, you have only the core left, which is the Vedic, rituals. And for that there is a hell lot of, literature, as Rajiv Malhotra ji has also pointed out in his latest book, all this critical race theory, etc., Brahminism, patriarchy, caste system, you have all of that to dismantle the core. So part by part, when you break this omnibus and bust the core too, then dismantling global Hindutva, which many people said cannot be dismantled until Hinduism is dismantled, becomes an international project which is hugely funded and hugely supported by all kinds of nefarious characters.
But how many of the characters here, the Bravehearts here, coming back to your book, and you say it very well, but Sat, Rajas and Tamas is integral. It's part of Vedantic teachings. It's part of the Bhagavad Gita, saying that people will chase and if you chase tamas, you will end up with tamas. And tamas is the mamsa, the rawness, and you've talked about that as an aspect which is there. Chasing rajas or rajasi tattvas, then again you have certain benefits, and you then worship those devatas who will give you materialistic benefits. And then you chase sat, the ultimate truth, then you rise. So out of 0 to 99 steps to the ultimate truth. But we are also the ones who say ekam sat vipra bahuda vedanti. That means there are many ways to approach that one particular truth. But how many of the Bravehearts here, coming back, actually did it for Bharat? How many of them were doing it for their own personal vested interests? Or was it, did it get intermingled, was it intertwined?
It's very difficult. It's a fuzzy area. because a lot of it was also driven by personal, protecting their kingdoms and so on. But several of them, like the Lalitaditya chapter, I also speak about the entire confederacy that many of these kings formed. It took the Arabs and the Islamic Sultanate itself to get established in India 500 years since the time of the invasion of Sindh till the time the Delhi Sultanate came in 1206. 500 years, repeated attempts made to attack Bharat and to colonize it. All of them failed. So there was some kind of a confederacy of people also that was formed. Nagabhatta, Bappa Raval, Pulakeshin, Vikramaditya, Danti Durga, all of them coming together, Lalitaditya and Yashovarman joining hands and pushing the Arabs back. Similarly, even when Naiki Devi of Gujarat, she pushes back Muhammad Ghori. Some of them she asks for help even from Prithviraj Chauhan and others who refuse, unfortunately, but she gets support from some of the other chieftains, local kingdoms. So I think it was a combination of maybe the concept of Bharat as a political entity was not as rife as it is today, though it was always a cultural, a spiritual and a civilizational entity that circulated everybody. But politically to fight for the nation may not have been a concept for many people, though in some cases we do see that they didn't want them to probably enter Aryavarta, maybe to not enter this region, the Mlechas as they were called. So for that, to that extent, there were lots of alliances and unions that were formed. Similarly, I mean, many centuries later in the Lachit Borphokon chapter, the Ahoms, they combine with the smaller Rajas of Kuch Bihar and all these other places to form a confederacy against the Mughals. Similarly, even in a small little town in Karnataka, the Ullal, this one, the Rani Abbaka, she forms alliances with the Keladi Nayakas and the Zamorin, the Samudrin of Calicut, and then they form a confederacy to push the Portuguese back. Velu Nachiyar in Tamil Nadu, I talk about how she joined hands with Hyder Ali and some of the other local chieftains to push back the East India Company and the Nawab of Arcot. So I think there is a combination. You can't purely say it is for Bharat, but there is some element of patriotism also, I think, imbued in it.
Last 2-3 days we've been having this discussion around the concept of Hindu, the word Hindu itself, because it was challenging, it came from Persia. So Professor Nachiketa Tiwari had a very interesting observation. He says as early as 445 AD, Chinese authors have mentioned the whole concept of Shindu or Shinto, how they've called it, and where they say that they may all be broken into different kingdoms, each fighting with each other. But somewhere they are one huge civilizational entity. They are bound by So do you believe that concept works, applies here even when you take a period, say, from 1857 onwards?
True. And
you talk about all of them?
True. And even before that, Anand, because she's not a warrior in the sense of the word while wearing a armor and bursting into the battlefield. Ahilyabai Holkar, whom I cover in this book. But I've included her because she was a civilizational warrior.
Correct.
She understood the importance of uniting this nation civilizationally, spiritually and culturally, and she very cleverly chose the places that she wanted to be renovated from the previous waves of iconoclasm. She chose the all the 12 Jyotirlingas. She chose the 7 Puris as mentioned in the Garud Purana, and she also took the 4 Dhams. So from Srinagar to Rameshwaram to Puri to Dwarka to even Kamrupa, she kind of united the whole country, so to say, with that very civilizational ethos. Of what it meant. We just talk about the Kashi Vishwanath Mandir, the Somnath Mandir that she spoke, but she even got the water from the Ganga to be made available in temples in South India, so that feeling that is there for the holy Ganga is felt even deep south. So what was that if there was no concept of this Bharat or this sense that we are one civilization? So I think that from Adi Shankara's time, when he established the mathas in the 4 cardinal points, to an Ahilyabai Holkar, this sense was always there, a common sphere of cultural circulation that went through the length and breadth of this land. And as the Vishnu Purana had always said that Uttaram yat samudrasya himadraschaiva dakshinam varshatad bharatam nama bharati yatra santati. So that was very clear, I think, in our ancestors and their imagination of what this landmass is. Political boundaries and borders, those keep changing. No country, America was not how it was today 300 years ago or so. So that will change, but civilizationally we have had that consciousness of being one.
What do you think, before I ask you that question, as I was going through and started the prologue, I stumbled upon this, where you said, and you used this particular passage of Vande Mataram.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, why did you use this passage? Is it one of the dropped passages, dropped passages of Vande Mataram?
That's
4
right.
verses, 2 were dropped.
Yes.
And you know, so there is a history behind why it was dropped.
True.
So you brought it back, saying this is something which Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's epic poem, which is translated by Aurobindo.
Yes.
Sri Aurobindo.
Yeah.
And that's why you brought the Koti Koti Kantha Kalkal Ninada Karle.
And Abala Keno Ma Eto Bole.
Ah.
So why do we call you an Abala Ma when you know there are so many Koti Kanthas are singing your praise, and you have so many Bhujay Dhrita Karatala Wale. So you have so many arm, shoulders. Abala Keno Eto Bole. Why do we have to call you a Abala when you have so many people singing your praise and double the number of brave arms who are there to defend you? So since this book is the story of these very defenders of that same Ma, whom we have always thought of as being Abala, a weak nation which has succumbed, I thought that was most appropriate to start the book with a stanza from Bankim Chandra.
And not just that, Bahubala Dharanim, Namami Taranim, Ripudala
Varanim,
Mataram, Vande Mataram.
Yes.
So I just thought, did you deliberately choose the passages which were dropped because of political reasons and because there are those entities in our country who said we cannot sing these phrases? So is that a message to that lot also?
Well, in some ways, but
see, I have to do my job as a news anchor.
I have to give you some headlines, right? No, but I think that opposition has always been there. But I thought, our conception of Bharat Mata or Bharat and the resistance itself, that has a history to it. And since this book deals with those very civilizational battles, Bankim Chandra and Sri Aurobindo, when he called this land as Bhavani Bharati, gave it that, and that's how the revolutionaries saw Bharat. All over. In Maharashtra it was Bhavani, in Bengal it was Durga, in Punjab Chandi. So they were all looking at Bharat Mata as this very, very strong and also militant kind of a version of how Durga is seen, to imbue that sense of strength which had somewhere been emasculated over the centuries of so many defeats and so on. So I thought this book needs to bring back that very martial spirit that had gone away, and in our historiography too, the defeatist kind of stories that we have heard. I thought this stanza evokes those very sentiments and wipes away all these defeatism and negative thoughts.
You believe somewhere this is a deliberate conditioning, Doc? We've got about 3-4 minutes, so I just want to dwell on a larger context. That is it important for us, and many believe Bharat is now going through an awakening. And somewhere this awakening is also about understanding where we come from and looking at itihasa as it happened and what is not being told to us. Because over the last 75 years, if not more, is there perhaps amidst all this narrative building, is this deliberate to try and tell us that we are weak, we need to be ruled, we need to be governed, and we are inferior?
Very true.
Is this a deliberate conditioning which we need to break out of?
Yes, and that's a colonial hand down, Anand, which I think the British started. Of course, the Persian chroniclers and others kept deriding us, saying the Hindus don't even have a sense of history writing, as Al-Biruni and others wrote. And once it came down to Macaulay and all the others, it was that there's no knowledge in India, there's nothing that they have of their own. And this was dinned into our heads that right from that myth of the Aryan invasion that was created, our earliest people have all come from outside. The destiny of you and your land is to be ruled by people from outside, thereby justifying their rule over us. We give this land civilization, education, culture, otherwise you are a set of barbarians. And so thereby justifying that foreign rule, which is what the British did, saying this is just one episode in the pattern of your long historical existence. And that we very subconsciously, I think, imbibed even after independence, when ideally after independence there should have been the revival that we are seeing today. But unfortunately, I think in the decades after freedom, our historiography has been so caught up in the stranglehold of ideology, the Marxist ideology of how we look at history, which further complicated this handover. They were very loyal, takedowns or inheritors of this legacy, and they perfected it further by inducing more sense of apologia, about guilt, self-loathing, lack of self-worth. All the time you are only harping on the negatives. Every society has positives and negatives. And I must emphasize here that it's this book or my work, it's not to stir up a sense of jingoism and pride of, Mera Bharat Mahan.
You've tried to steer clear of that.
Correct. Because there is a very thin line. When you talk of this revisionism and so on, there is a slippery slope of falling down jingoism. But I think feeling a sense of genuine pride and genuine worth about yourself, your ancestors and their achievements and where you have come down, I think this is a right of every citizen of every nation in the world. Only India and Indians are denied this, and when we do this, we are called Hindu nationalism and supremacy, saffronization and all of this, which is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, because I see the effort to try and pull us as a nation, as a civilization, as an entity out of our inferiority complex and that mindset, to try and give us a sense of belief, is being misconstrued as muscle flexing and a superiority complex being imbued. And that's why even Prime Minister Narendra Modi is being dubbed by this academia as a Hindu nationalist PM. Now, do you believe this is also deliberate? How do you counter a narrative like that? When you know the intent is to instill belief, how do you counter this?
I think the best way to counter is to continue your work. So I have been at the forefront of so many attacks, as you know, from people from all over the world. But
some even saying, how can you call him a historian? He's a fake, etc.
I may be recognized by the Royal Historical Society of UK, but then that's not enough. And I have a PhD, that's not enough. So anyway, be that as it may. But I think the best way to counter, if you really have to, there's no point answering anybody. You have to continue with your work, and as individuals, as groups, as a nation. And I think that's what Mr. Modi does. He doesn't stand by to answer anybody. He's on his mission, which he goes on and on about. Barking dogs on the way may bark. So I think that's the only way to deal with it. And I think once India's emergence and resurgence is inevitable now. Whether
Good evening. Welcome to Brass Tacks. I'm Zaka Jacob. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was in Moscow today, where in a joint press conference with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, the External Affairs Minister extolled Russia as a time-tested partner. India so far in this war, which is well into its 9th month now, has so far walked a fine balance, not alienating either Russia or the West,